need to turn it on there. Oh, it's good. All right. Well, welcome to RUF. I know it's just a couple of us here, or a few of us right now. We might have some more joining as things go on. But as I know from history, there's almost always somebody on the live stream, even when I'm not aware. So live stream folks, you are welcome here as well. Hello, Morgan. We also had another person just join us if you're watching. But welcome to RUF. Really glad that you could be here. Are things okay at East?
We had a fire, so I've been outside for an hour and a half.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
But all is good. Like,
Okay.
it smells like smoke from another building.
Oh, man. Okay. Wow. A what? Oh, dang. Oh. Yeah. That is sad. What a week. Oh, yeah, Luke, I don't know if you know this, but Millersville's network was hacked this week. So. Multiple universities. Whoa. Okay. I was wondering about that. I asked somebody that like yesterday or something. I'm like, I wonder if other universities are having this issue at all, or if it's just Millersville. Wasn't targeted? Okay. So better, more updated news. Microsoft has been attacked. Yeah. Yeah, right. Yeah, and I mean, we've heard all kinds of stories too, like what happened, but yeah, the thing that you said, Morgan, I overheard someone saying, like yesterday. Yeah. So, yeah, not quite as spicy maybe, but yeah. It's a crazy week. Yeah. So, wherever you're at tonight, wherever you're coming from, wild week, I understand, but thank you for joining us. And I hope you are safe. If you're watching via live stream, then you are safe. You're probably not in East right now. But we're glad you can join us. Tonight we've got Luke Leduc, who is with us to share a bit of his story, and then we'll have a bit of Q&A as well, which I'm excited about. But before we get into any of that, we do have an icebreaker question that we need to resolve. It is very important. So the question is, what is your go-to peanut butter? I did. Yep. Yeah. So there are lots of peanut butter varieties out there. You might like yours smooth and creamy. You might like it crunchy. You might be a Jif person all the way, or there's some variety. Maybe you're allergic to peanuts and you are really into like almond butter or something like that. So, Morgan Slaw, you've had a little bit of time to think about this, so why don't you share with us?
Well, so my family has just always had just regular peanut butter. And because I'm not like a peanut butter person, literally never had anything else. So I'm like, that's my go-to. But if we're gonna get into the debate of what's the best peanut butter, I can say, oh, I like this one. I think
Yeah, that's fair. But yeah, it's your go-to then.
yes.
For sure your go-to. Whether or not, yeah. Yeah. One day I'm gonna bring like a sample kit, and you're gonna try. Yeah. All right, Josiah, what do you got? Okay. What is its place? Yeah? Oh yeah. It's a little extra, yeah, Yeah, I hear you. hmm Luke, do you have a go-to peanut butter?
You know, growing up, I think we were Peter Pan crunchy.
Wow, okay.
I love crunchy peanut butter. I don't eat peanut butter at all, hardly. I mean, I
Okay.
don't remember the last time I had peanut butter.
Yeah.
But in our house, peanut butter gets eaten a ton. And now it's that Smucker's natural
Oh,
with
yes.
oil and
Oh, yeah. I had some of that today.
yeah.
Uh-huh.
So that's all we have in the house now.
Okay.
Except we have some friends who are refugees. No, they're not refugees. I think they're not refugees. They're from Nigeria, but they're living here temporarily
Okay.
while they're studying. Well, they get some benefit from their children's school where they send home stuff for them.
Okay.
And they brought us like a bag of 13 jars of peanut butter
Oh,
because they do not eat peanut butter. So
oh wow.
that
Okay.
has nothing to do with this question. But
Okay. No, that's a good little.
I have a bag
Yeah.
of 13 or 14 jars of peanut butter.
Wow. Okay.
If any of you
That's a lot of peanut butter. Yeah.
hungry.
If I run low.
And by the way, good work. How long did it take you to set all that up?
Oh, it took me a while. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah. Yep.
You really committed to the icebreaker.
I did. Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, thankfully I could reimburse all those jars, through RUF funding, and now I can just eat it. But no, yeah, there were definitely some on there I've never seen before, but it is what it is. Morgan Toll, what do you got? Uh-huh. Oh, yeah. 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 Uh-huh. Yeah. No, that's fair. Yeah. My house growing up, it was always Jif creamy. That was just the way to go. But I have developed a taste for some of the natural peanut butters now. So, Smucker's natural, I like. I typically pour some of the oil off whenever I open a jar because it's just a lot of oil. But also, I think it's on here. The very bottom right-hand corner, there's like the green label. I think that's Teddy's. I really like Teddy's actually. I stumbled upon it and it's really good. But I eat a lot of peanut butter, so that's why I asked this question. But that's it for the icebreaker. So our call to Oh, rarely. Morgan and I talked about this a little bit. On occasion, we will. I do. Not often. Like it's not something I really think to do much, but yeah. Do you? Yeah. Oh yeah. All right. Well, once it gets nice out, we're definitely making another trip to Pineview as a pretty large group thing. So, yeah. So for our call to worship tonight, yeah. So like I said, Luke's here. He's going to share a little bit of his story. We'll have Q&A to follow, and our call to worship comes from Hebrews actually, and as we hear some of Luke's story and he gets to share a bit of his testimony, I'm reminded that Luke's story and my story and your story, if you have faith, they're really not our stories in a sense. They are Christ's story and the work that he has done through us, the work that he continues to do through us. We are pointed to Jesus and his glory, his goodness, his splendor. And that is the Christ that we are here to worship. So let me read the call to worship, and then I'll pray, and then after that we can listen to a song. So, it comes from Hebrews chapter 3. Therefore, holy brothers, you who share in a heavenly calling, consider Jesus, the apostle and high priest of our confession, who was faithful to him who appointed him, just as Moses also was faithful in all God's house. For Jesus has been counted worthy of more glory than Moses, as much more glory as the builder of a house has more honor than the house itself. For every house is built by someone, but the builder of all things is God. Now Moses was faithful in all God's house as a servant, to testify to the things that were to be spoken later. But Christ is faithful over God's house as a son. And we are his house, if indeed we hold fast our confidence and our boasting in our hope. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for gathering us here tonight. Lord, you are good, and we celebrate you. We rejoice in who you are, what you have done through your Son, Jesus Christ. I pray that you would lift up our hearts this evening as we hear from Luke and as we engage with him. And Father, I also pray that you would be with the students here at Millersville, everyone who's been affected by the fire. I thank you for the safety that you've granted students on this campus, that seems as if no one's been injured or harmed from the fire. I thank you for that. But Father, I pray that you would bring your peace and security. I pray that you would create a stable situation on campus right now and calm those who are feeling overwhelmed at the moment. And through it all, I pray that you would point people to Jesus, that they would turn to you for comfort. And I pray also for our internet situation, and just with the cyber attack that's happened this week, I pray for stability with that, and I ask that you would bring to justice the perpetrator or perpetrators, and I ask, God, that you would return campus to normal as soon as possible. We thank you for your love for us. Pray that you would be with us this evening. It's in your name we pray. Amen.
Consider Moses, the father and the leader of a people, in faithfulness to God without an equal. He was faithful as a servant. Consider Jesus, the author and high priest of our confession, who was faithful to the Lord without exception. He was faithful as a son. The first one led a nation of many generations to promise they were bound. More glory is the maker of the stories, the builder of the house, the builder of the house. Now consider yourself. Do you know you're a part of this household? If you hold fast to the faith and don't lose hope, will you be faithful till the end? Faithful till the end.
Thanks for having me, everybody. I am Luke Leduc, and I think I've met you all. So, my story, and I will not take all night with this. I told Keith, like, once you start talking about yourself, it's hard to stop, isn't it? So, no, I'll be brief because I want you to ask questions, and I think there are a couple ways to approach my story that'll give you a sense of who I am and how I wound up where I am today. So the first part is just like biography, geographical, all the data that you would think goes into that. So I was born in Dover, Delaware, about 2 hours and 15 minutes south of here. Every time I go to visit my mom, I can look over on the Air Force Base there and see the building where I was born in this little Air Force Base hospital. So I was born in anybody want to guess? 76, it doesn't matter. I'll be 45 next month now, yeah. So I was born in 1976. I was born in Delaware. My mom and her family have lived in Delaware all their lives. I grew up in Delaware. My dad is from Connecticut, New England area. His dad was a French-Canadian immigrant who came into the French-Canadian community in New England and met my dad's mom. Anyway, so there's that's the Leduc part. That's the French-Canadian. Yeah, and my parents had all that time to figure out a name, and they still came up with Luke Leduc. This has been a real struggle at different points in my life to know that they had 9 months, and there was one part of the name that wasn't going to change. They knew it was going to be Leduc, and that was the best they could do. No. It's Luke Donald Leduc. My dad's name is Donald, which is great. It's good, whatever. It's whatever until you realize that the most common mispronunciation of my last name is Leduc. And so when Donald Leduc got out there in middle school, that was hell. Unbelievable. No, it was fine. You either learn to laugh or you learn to curl up in a fetal position throughout most of junior high school. And I learned to laugh. So I was born into a very faithfully Christian family. And my mom read to me the entire New Testament scriptures out loud while I was in utero. On purpose, read to her belly. Now, again, that didn't do anything special other than, I didn't get any pastoral powers from that. Yeah. But all I'm saying that for is to say that's the sort of world that I grew up in. And I grew up, so that's sort of the family, a very faithful and engaged mom and dad and great parents. And we had our problems. My mom and my dad were both married before they got married. They didn't always live Christian lives, and so I have 3 older sisters, 2 from my dad's first marriage and 1 from my mom's first marriage. So I grew up in a mixed household like that. But my mom and dad had been radically transformed by the gospel when they were married. They were very young Christians, and so they were being very intentional with myself and my sister and my adopted sister. So I had 5 sisters, and I was the only boy. So consequently, I'm very comfortable with lots of estrogen around. And until 3 years ago, I had 3 daughters, and I was the only boy. So it was just like it always was growing up. But I grew up in a Baptist family, very devout. And along with that devoutness, though, I mean, if you're just learning how to be critical of your family that you grew up in, right? And you'll probably get more critical before you get less critical at your age. So I've been there and walked through that. There's a lot of wonderful things, and my parents were excellent parents, and the environment that we were raised in was a very legalistic environment. Do you know what I mean when I say that? I don't know. It's basically, there were a lot of codes for our Christianity. You didn't smoke, and you didn't drink, and you didn't chew, and that sort of thing. There was a heavy dose of being a Christian meant these categories of morality. And we understood grace to a certain degree. We understood that there was nothing that we could do to earn God's love and forgiveness. But also, there was a sense that we were really darn good people. I contemplated using the vernacular, but I didn't. But we also knew that we were really good people compared to most other people. And I think that's been so that's the world that I grew up in, a very devout, went to church Sunday morning and Sunday night, and we had Wednesday night services. So I went to church 3 times a Sunday, or 3 times a week, didn't miss. And but underneath all of that, there was this real story of the gospel, but there was also this sense of the way we do things is really better than a lot of the way other people do things. And there was a little bit of that self-righteousness, maybe. So all of us are a mixed bag, right? Every situation that we find ourselves in is a mixed bag. That was sort of something that I grew up in. So I grew up, because I had 5 sisters, the pastor at the church that I grew up in, he had 3 sons, and I was like a 4th son in that family because I was always looking for an escape to go and, hang out with my buddies. So I grew up in that house, and this was I knew from growing up around that family that the last thing that I wanted to do was be a pastor at a church. And because I grew up really, really close to it and seeing what that was like and not wanting any part of it. I didn't want any part of the salary of a pastor. I didn't want any part of the life of a pastor. And yet, I loved Christ. I loved the gospel. But that was my line. I'll do anything as long as I don't have to be a pastor. To that end, I'm in high school. I'm a good kid. I'm not out there. Again, think of our self-righteousness underneath. I was doing all the right things, but in this one area that I knew God. I knew God was. It almost felt inevitable. If you've ever, I don't know, it's this weird thing, but there was this inevitability. There was this deep knowledge that I knew that this is where God was calling me. But it was the last thing I wanted to do. So I finished high school and I'm looking at colleges, and I decide that, well, maybe if I go to college as a music education major, that I could kind of work in a church or in a Christian school and a church, and I won't have to be a pastor, but I'll be close enough that the lightning bolt won't. Again, I'm not saying this was logical or brilliant thinking, but this is how I was putting it together, was that I'll just be close enough so that everything I do will look really good and pious, but I'm not going to be a pastor. And so I went to college and I majored for 4 years as a music education major. And somebody should have stopped me somewhere along the way, because I love people. I don't necessarily like highly organizational, like, curriculums. I don't like writing lesson plans, and I hated it the whole time I was there. Are there any education majors in the room? No? Okay, so when I was an education major, they were making us do bulletin boards. I don't know if I'm sure now you'd have to do something with web teacher application stuff. But like, it was a huge indignity to me to be told to do a bulletin board. I don't know why, but that just felt like the most ridiculous busy work that I could imagine. And so but I keep plugging away, because anything's better than being a pastor, right? So I get to my student teaching my senior year of college, and I thought, I could do this. Yeah, I hate this about it. But I get to stand up in front of kids, and I get to connect to them, and so there's that part that I like. But there's a lot more to being a teacher than just standing up and connecting with kids, obviously. And I get to my student teaching, and I hated every minute of it. And at the end, I did, this is my last semester of my senior year. And so that's what's going on in my education as a college student. The backdrop to my growing discontent with my major is that I go home over the summer, and again, I'm really close friends with the pastor's boys, and we're over there hanging out late one night, and he says, "Luke, why don't you take over the Sunday evening service next week?" I thought, as a music major, I thought he meant do this music or, lead the worship. That's what I thought he meant. And he did mean that. But about the middle of the week, he asked me how the sermon was coming for Sunday night. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And he said, "No, you're going to do the sermon. How's that coming?" And I was like, I wasn't planning on doing the sermon. "No, yeah, you'll do great. You'll do the sermon." And I was like, "Are you kidding me?" This is like the one thing that I refused to do. But I was a good kid, and I was trying to earn my stripes as a Christian in a really unhealthy way in many ways. So I agreed to do it, and I did it, and if you guys think I preach long now, you get me in a Baptist context. The Bible says the wages of sin is death. Now all heads are bowed and eyes are closed. No, that is the tradition that I grew up in. I never actually did that. I was really good at making fun of people that did that, but I never actually did that. But the point is, I got up there my first sermon, and I went for over an hour. And I was having a ball. And I'm sure it was terrible. Not only was it terrible, but I'm sure there was a lot of horrible motives mixed up in it. It was probably just terrible all around. I remember that some helpful friend counted how many times I said, "You know what I mean?" As verbal clutter. And I can't remember, but it was a gobsmackingly outrageous number of times that in my communication I would say, "You know what I mean?" Just because I was so nervous or whatever. But God really used that in my life to begin. He used my hatred for teaching elementary school violin, which I did teach a private lesson of elementary school violin. I also taught class lessons of elementary piano. That was a debacle. What was the other? Well, those were the two that are just sort of burned in my memory. There were some other things that didn't go quite so well either. But those two, me teaching private violin lessons and like those poor parents who were paying tuition at this school. It was a private Christian school I did my student teaching at. Anyway, God used my growing, I've done it again. I've already gone way longer than I thought. God used my growing sense of discontent with this education major that I've done. And I'm grateful for education majors. I just knew it wasn't where I needed to be. And he used this like thing that I'd been running from, but that was foisted upon me unwittingly, to really shape my life's call after that. And but I graduated with a music education degree, so that's what my bachelor's degree is in, music education. And I did not look for teaching jobs. I actually started looking for youth director jobs. And so that was really actually a really good fit for me. I would have never considered doing that from the beginning of college, but by the end of college, God had been at work in a lot of other ways. Those are the two main ways. So that I found a job in Houston, Texas, a full-time director of youth, an assistant pastor actually at a Baptist church, very similar to the church that I grew up in. But of course, that wasn't the end of the story, because about 3 years into that job, it was a place that continued to perpetuate a lot of legalism and sort of self-righteousness about who we are as Christians and how we understand the gospel better than everyone else, and those sorts of things that are just really difficult and dangerous places. They're difficult places to maintain in the reality of life, and they're dangerous places for our souls and our hearts. But in the midst of that, I got really discontent. The more I read the scriptures, the more I ministered to high school students who were wrestling with questions, who were longing to grow, and it's a long story of how I came to this point. But I came to a point where I was once again done being a pastor. And I had one friend in this church that thought about things very differently, and I had never met anyone who talked about Jesus and the gospel in the way that he talked about Jesus and the gospel, about grace for all of the difficult places in our lives, rather than how we become close to Jesus is by doing better and doing more. He was the first person to share with me. So let me take 2 steps back. So I'm in this really difficult place. There's a lot of stuff that I'm being asked to do that I have no stomach for, with regards to like legalistic rules to hold up in our fellowship about what girls could wear and what girls couldn't wear, what music you should listen to, what music you shouldn't listen to, whether you can say, one of the big things was being able to say drinking is a sin, not just drunkenness is a sin, as the scriptures teach, but to be able to say that you should never touch a drop of alcohol. So there were these things that I just could not, in conscience, continue to represent and be a part of, perpetuating, as I tried to minister the gospel. And I had lunch with this guy one day, and I said, hey, I'm resigning, and I'm going to go to U of A, University of Houston, and do a master's degree in business, and finally get out of this pastoral gig and go try and make some money. And he said, yeah, why would you do that? What are you struggling with? And so I shared with him some of the struggles that I've had. And I also, I'm not going to get into the weeds on it tonight, but I had some theological issues, burning theological questions. I won't bore you with those, that my tradition didn't even ask those questions, let alone answer. I thought I had invented new theological dilemmas. And he was like, dude, they've been talking about that for 2,000 years. It's this and it's this. And I'm like, what are you talking? How come nobody ever told me that? So, and then he shared with me basically the real story of the gospel, the real story of God's love in Jesus that pursues his people to the uttermost and the ends and to the darkest places, and in patient love draws them to himself because of what Jesus has done, and that our salvation from beginning to end is all about God's love for us in Jesus, not what we do to clean ourselves up, not the life that we sort of put on and try to wear even though it's clunky so that everyone will see we are. But he showed me that the love of God in Jesus is about rescuing us from all of our places of darkness and brokenness, and then lovingly putting us back together in ways that we grow to learn and to love and to be in relationship with God through what Jesus has done for us in life-giving ways as sons and daughters of the Father, who has loved us from the very beginning. And that, it's the same gospel in a sense that I grew up with my entire life, but it's like the edges were far more sharper and cleaner, and the lines weren't so fuzzy, and there wasn't such, it was in Technicolor. I mean, you don't remember black and white in Technicolor, but the point is, I'd never seen it like this. It was the same old story, but I knew it better now. And as I reflect on it, I think that's actually the thing that saved my life in a sense. And as I've gotten more distance from sort of the tradition that I grew up in, I value a ton of stuff about the tradition that I was reared in. They love the scriptures, they love Jesus, they're devoted Christians. There's nothing like that's out of place. But I do think that that essential understanding of God's love as this thing that we're never earning. We're never earning God's love. God is always loving us in spite of our best efforts. That's not to say that we don't have to give any sort of efforts towards it. And that's a whole nother discussion about the place of works in the life of a Christian. We can have all those discussions, and maybe you want to ask questions about that. But anyway, so I'm at this church, and I wanted to resign, but then this guy gave me some stuff that started leading me towards a more gospel-centered understanding of Christianity. And that put me more at odds with my current employer. So about 5 years after I'd been a youth director and assistant pastor for 5 years, well, that's kind of a longer story, and you can ask me about that, but I'm not going to get into it, how I left the Baptist church. But I wound up leaving the Baptist church, and then I worked for a year selling houses. In Texas, you don't have to have, I was in Texas, you don't have to have a real estate license to sell new homes if you work for a builder. So I worked for a custom builder, and I was selling new homes, but it was totally unsatisfying. And I wasn't making much money anyway, but I was making money, but it wasn't, it's not that I left all this money to go back. So I went from there to seminary. Yeah, the job wasn't working out either. But the point of it is that being outside of pastoral ministry was incredibly unsatisfying. And I'm really grateful for that time that I had to sort of live the dream that I had had for a long time, to see, yeah. So I've never wrestled with, since then, I've never wrestled with my vocation. I've been weary in this work, as George Whitfield has said, but I've never been weary of this work. And this year, if I'm just being honest with you all, has been a very wearying year with all of the stuff around COVID protocols and everyone's opinions about masks or no masks and all of that stuff. So it's been a wearying year. But even at that, even as weary as this work gets, there's deep joy for me personally in it. And so, yeah, I went to seminary, did a Master of Divinity at Westminster Theological Seminary in Dallas, Texas. They had a Dallas campus at that point. I graduated from there in 2007, moved to Tampa, Florida, and did a 2-year internship in a Presbyterian church, and then saw an ad online for a church in Lancaster that was looking for an assistant pastor. And this was back close to where my mom and dad lived in Delaware. So we'd been in Texas and Florida for, a lot of years, but we're wanting to get back on this part of the world. So I applied, and I slept in Laura's room when I first flew up here to interview. I think it was Laura's room. Betsy couldn't remember. I was reviewing this with her yesterday. But I stayed with Matt's future in-laws, who are longtime members of Wheatland. I stayed with them when I flew up to interview. At my interview, this is true, I'll even say his name for those of you who know him, Ned Bustard was asleep as an elder during my interview. The interview was in Bruce Mawhinney's living room, and Ned was like that on the couch. Ned's a good friend of mine, so I remind him of that. But so that's how I came here to be a pastor in this denomination. A denomination that I think loves the gospel in robust and rich ways, and yet is still warm and open to our brothers and sisters that are in other denominations that might think a little bit differently on other particulars of the gospel. In 2012, maybe, I started to do a master's degree. It's called in the U.S. they call it a THM. In the U.K., where I did this degree, they call it an MTH, but it's a Master's of Theology. The Master of Divinity degree is more of like a practical degree, a practitioner's degree, and the MTH is a little bit more of an academic degree. It's just a little different. You focus in on more narrowly rather than learning broadly what it means to be a pastor. You focus more narrowly on one theological interest, one theological stream, and then write a dissertation or a thesis, a master's thesis on it. So I finished that in 2019, and in 2020, in March, I was over for graduation when everything shut down, actually. I was flying back on the Sunday, March 15th, I think it was, our first Sunday of not having worship. So I'm a year out of that. So anyway, that's it. I'll stop now. I could keep talking, but I'll stop.
Yeah, so what questions
Josiah.
So you spoke about denomination. What do you think is the importance, if there is one,
Yeah, I do think they are important. And I think there are denominations that are outside of ours, obviously, that are true churches, real churches. And the importance of denominations are that the church is there's this huge global phenomenon, but nobody experiences church that way. I mean, we can kind of conceive of it, but we actually experience church locally. And in order for us to experience church locally, you have to have a local body and a local fellowship. And I think the importance of denominations are accountability and I'm going to say a word that's not really popular, but authority. And I don't mean so this is a whole nother thing, and I'm talking out of deep familiarity with this, because one of the faults of my earlier denomination was, frankly speaking, lots of abuses of authority. And maybe some of you have been in church settings where you've seen church authority abused and spiritual authority abused. I think it's important for us to remember, my generation as much as yours, that the abuse of a thing is not an argument against the thing itself. And that's a useful phrase for anything you encounter, but this is also true in church authority. The abuse of it is not an argument against the idea that God's Word does have this authoritative role in the life of His people, and that there is this place in which we come together as God's people and we submit ourselves. And, you know, we could do a whole night on the nature of true spiritual authority, and that it is never, it's only declarative. It is never physical. So much so that when we serve communion, let's say, at Wheatland, if we were to, so they use that. If we were to serve communion, we describe with our words, based on the Scriptures, who should be partaking and who shouldn't be partaking. But we never push somebody back who takes it. We would never grab it out of someone's hand. The nature, and I take that very seriously, the nature of our authority is only declarative. And we can only declare what the Scriptures set forth, what are the words of God. But that's a very important role. Your question was, why are denominations important? Coming back to that, I think denominations are important because in a denomination like ours, when authority is being abused, this is just one reason. There are hundreds of them. Maybe not hundreds. There are many good reasons why denominations are necessary. But one of them is for local accountability of local bodies. If we were all independent churches and we weren't connected to one another, if there was nowhere to go, if Matt is experiencing some sort of spiritual abuse at my hands, if we're an independent church and we're not part of a denomination, a larger church that is accountable to each other, he has nowhere to go. If I'm a dynamic personality in my independent church and I can put together a team of yes men around me, and I don't say this theoretically, I've seen this happen, I've lived in situations where this happens. If I'm dynamic enough and if I'm persuasive enough and I can build a deacon board around me who just rubber stamp everything that I say, Matt could say all he wants, but there's no accountability for me. And that's what I think is important about a church that is connectional, that authority is really important, and it's really important that it's not abused. As important as church authority is, it's incredibly important as well that it's not abused, that there are checks and balances for it. That's one answer. Let me venture another one. All denominations are not equally good at doing some of the things that other denominations are. This is all off the cuff, but my charismatic brothers and sisters in the world, they are reaching a different set of people than our Presbyterian brothers and sisters are reaching. I'm talking about certain things that I'm passionate about and that are important. and they're not going to connect in certain demographics. And I'm not saying that's not a reason to be stretched and to be, but I'm saying the fact of the matter is that if you come to Wheatland, we are a white, middle class to upper middle class denomination with our own sets of cares and concerns. And we're always working to stretch that and stretch who we are to be more aware of our brothers and sisters of other places. Just before I came here, part of the reason why I was late was I was sitting with a man from our ESL classes who's dying with liver cancer. And he's at home on hospice. So we're stretching, we're working, we're pressing that out, but that doesn't happen overnight. And our brothers and sisters in different and I used our charismatic brothers and sisters, who we have some very different views about stuff on. I'm not saying that. We think very differently about certain things. But the point is, they're very comfortable in places that I've never been. And there are things that we can appreciate about that and give thanks to God for, even while maintaining dialogue. Now, I'm talking about an ideal world, right? Not actually a world that always exists. But it does exist in certain places and in certain stretches. All right, sorry. You got me going. It's your fault, Josiah. Mm-hmm. 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 I didn't hear that. Say it again. Sure. Yeah. No, I mean, yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, you're asking the right guy on this. Because guess what my people used to do? I grew up in that tradition. And you would stand on the corner and you would yell, I mean, is this being broadcast nationally, Matthew? I'm just, okay. So anyway. Okay. But I know that it's in the archives. It doesn't matter. It's the truth. I know what is going on in that situation, okay? And I will tell you the mindset, because that's what I grew up in. A group of people from my church would go down to Rehoboth Beach, Delaware. I grew up really close to the shore down there. And I hope somebody asks me a question about fishing, because that really is my deep love. Not the gospel, not any of this. No, I'm totally kidding. But our people would go to Rehoboth Beach on Friday nights in the summer, and we'd go to the boardwalk, and it's what they call street preaching. And the whole goal of it, I promise you, that a huge portion of it was to get people to persecute you, in a sense. So you could say you were suffering for the gospel. Like it was a big, let me take 2 steps back. That wasn't the only goal of it. But a huge joy in it was if the cops were called. And you got to stand up for Jesus when the cops were called. And so there's that portion of it. These are people who were looking for stripes on their uniform of Christianity because they'd experienced persecution. I've been there 100 times when the cops have been called, not 100. I've been there a number of times when the cops have been called to our group. And all of the talk was, well, we stood up for Jesus and they were trying to shut us down, but we did it. Like, this is not what the gospel talks about. This is not what Paul's talking about in Romans about. So there's a whole, yeah, so that's part of it. The other part of it is, it is a sort of, as somebody's already noted, a sort of vehicle for a cultural critique. It becomes a way in which you can perpetuate what is what I want to call cultural Christianity in many ways. And look, we're all liable to falling into cultural Christianity. My cultural Christianity might be a little more refined. I might have, a nice single malt whiskey and a tweed jacket on, or so. Okay, my cultural Christianity is going to be different, but we're all in danger of perpetuating a cultural Christianity. But if part of your culture is that let's see here, is that you're, I'm trying to be careful and thoughtful about this. I'm trying to think of specific things. If you hate gay people, you're going to love going to Rehoboth Beach, which is the northeast capital for homosexual vacation, and it's that. That's the gay capital of our little area of the world. You're going to love going there and getting in the face, even if it's with the gospel, and offending people who are gay with the gospel, because you hate the very notion of it. And not because, you hate it because it's icky to you, not because you're really passionate about what something the scriptures teach about human sexuality and how sexuality actually works in God's creation. That's not actually what's at stake for you. What's at stake for you is how can anybody do that? Or you might secretly wrestle with it yourself, and this is some posturing that you can do that proves, I've seen all kinds of strange things like that. How to deal with these people interpersonally? I wish you'd invite me sometime, because I'd love to go and talk to them, just to say, hey, I've been doing what you're doing there, and I appreciate the gospel, and I love the gospel, and I think you're actually cheapening the gospel in what you're doing. And I love the gospel too much to stand here silently and let you cartoonize it in this way. It's way bigger than the gospel doesn't need me to defend it in that sense. So there's not a sense in which if I don't do that, I feel like I've lost something and that I'm not being faithful if I don't go up and say that. So I'm not trying to put that on anyone's conscience here. Yeah, but that's what I would say to them if they really ticked me off. No, I'm kidding. That's what I would say to them, actually passionately and honestly. It's like, I know what you're doing, and the gospel you preach is way smaller than the gospel actually is. And so, I don't know exactly, but that's, I think, but I would caution you against actually getting into a conversation with them, because what they want to do is that will be a sign to them that they're actually, they will earn stripes by making you mad in that way. And they want a reaction. And I know that. I'm not imposing, or what's the word? I'm not projecting that on them. I know that that's what our people were going for. I was there and I was never comfortable with that, but I was part of it and I thought I should be comfortable with it. So, just by temperament, I'm a nice guy. So that doesn't like jive with me. I don't like to piss people off in general. But I always felt bad that I should enjoy pissing people off more than I do. Why don't I enjoy this as much as these guys seem to enjoy it? So I felt a little guilty when I was there. Not because I thought what they were doing was wrong, but because I thought, I don't enjoy this enough. But be that all that to say, it's a sense in which it's a losing battle to engage it, really. I think so. Because any pushback you give is received as part of the reason. If you push back, that's their sense that they've really been successful with it. So I don't think there's anything you can do but to maybe as you walk by say, I love Jesus too, thank you. You know, I've done that. I've never actually, I've seen the guys down in Lancaster City on Market Day. I think you'll see guys down there. And yeah, we probably know people that know people. It's a small world. That world is very small. I have more street preacher impressions I could do. I mean, if the night is lagging, no. I don't feel like I told you a very coherent story, but there's so much that I just wanted to give you a broad brush outline. You can always email me. I'm terrible at getting back to emails, but you can email me and you'll feel better for having asked your question. No, I'm kidding. I was a vocal major. I did a 45-minute senior recital. I sang German and Italian and yeah, I'm a terrible singer. I really am. I mean, no, okay, so I can sing, but somebody should have said, son, just because you can carry a tune does not mean you should be a vocal major. Like there's a range here, and somebody should have said, Luke. Yeah. Well, I wasn't tone deaf, and I was just, I had enough of the other stuff to fake my way through. Because as an education major, you're expected to be able to teach, like I took brass methods and woodwind methods and strings methods. I guess like an elementary teacher is expected to teach art and music, or I don't know if you have to teach music, but art, and maybe you don't have to teach art now. I don't know. But as a music education major, I was expected to be able to teach piano, blah, blah, blah. So I had to take piano instruction, all that, yeah. Yeah. So. Probably like, I caught a 50-pound yellowfin tuna this summer. Yeah. I ate it while I was cleaning it. I was shaving off little pieces. It's sushi, it's sashimi. It's lovely. Yeah, so that might be the biggest that I've actually ever caught. I love the ocean. So, I grew up on the water. You know, I know, like in Delaware, have you guys ever been to the Delaware beaches? Like Dolly's? Okay, they probably have Dolly's saltwater taffy. It's fine. I actually don't eat sugar, so it's just, yeah, it's fine. I'm not crazy. I could eat it, or I obviously am quite fine not eating it. So, that's it. Thanks. Oh, one more.
What, just one more. Do you own a fish tank or anything, or do you just enjoy like the actual act of fishing?
Yeah, I have had fish tanks in the past, so I do enjoy that part of life as well, but I don't have one currently. I just, at this point, enjoy fishing and eating fresh fish. Yeah. Thanks, Matthew. Thank you, guys.
All right. Well, thank you, Luke. That was awesome. Thanks for sharing. And yeah, if you guys do have more questions that you think of later, obviously Luke is still a resource. So, and he'll be back again sometime at RUF. So, yeah, you can email him or message me and I can relay it to him. But we have some announcements for this evening. Most of these are kind of the normal ones, so like small group, you guys know that. We can kind of roll through some of those. Small group and prayer group are continuing to happen as usual. Wheatland, yeah, if you want to hear Luke some more. Are you preaching this week? Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, come on by to Wheatland and you'll have some fun. The 10 o'clock service, it has a live stream, so I know some of you have been tuning in for that. And there's 8 and 12 o'clock services as well, which you can attend 8, 10, or 12 in person. And let me know if you need a ride to that at any point. Yes. So, folks, this is exciting. This is very, very exciting news. There's going to be, not the beach. There's going to be a regional summer conference, all right? This is the most exciting news I have to share. I can't think of anything more exciting. Now, of course, in a COVID world, there is no such thing as a guarantee anymore because there are no guarantees. But as close to a guarantee as I can give you, this is going to happen. It is pretty much every relevant person in RUF has given approval for this, and this is going to happen. So it is a week-long conference, kind of like summer conference usually is. Instead, in some ways, guys, like this is even a sweeter deal for all of you. Maybe you're really into the beach and that's your thing. Either way, this is not going to be a 20-hour drive. The camp is it's a Doubling Gaps Center. It's like a Christian camp. It is like an hour and a half from here. Like you can get there in 90 minutes from here. So this is real close. It'll be pretty much the same time frame that summer conference usually is. So finals will end on like the 7th or something like that. The Sunday after your finals end, we will drive out to this camp and we will spend the week and come back on like Friday. There will be probably like 5 or 6 schools there. So it's just going to be like a mid-Atlantic kind of thing. So I know like Rowan is going to be there. Penn State is going to be there. I think I forget some of the a lot of the schools that we would see at our training conference or fall conference. Those kinds of schools. Delaware. I think Delaware State's going to be there. Yes, they are. WV will. Yes. Well, they're going to be there. Yep. Yeah. So yeah, West Virginia is going to be there, and it's going to be fun. Yeah, this is going to be awesome. Like it's going to be. Yeah, if you're familiar at all with summer conference, there's a lot of. So we have like seminars, and not just seminars. Like these are actually really cool seminars that the pastors coming will kind of talk about all sorts of awesome things that you might have questions about. And then we have a lot of free time. You kind of hang out, play games, and just enjoy like being done with school. And guys, you can do this in person with other people. And then there's worship time too. And wait, Josiah, do you have a question, or were you just stretching? I don't know for sure. As of now, I'm not aware that he is, but. Okay. Yeah. So, and I have more good news. I don't have any guarantees on this note either, but I believe this is going to be very cheap for each of you guys. Summer conference usually runs like in the $500 range or a little more because, you know, you're going to the beach and it's expensive. The initial price point for this for students is like in the $300 range, which is a lot cheaper than what normally is, but it might even be a lot cheaper than that. I can't offer any guarantees at this point, but I'm going to do everything within my power to make sure that you pay as little as possible, and absolutely guarantee that money cannot be the reason that you don't go. So if you're like, hey, I don't have a penny, then you don't have to pay a penny. Like we will find a way to make sure that money is not the reason you can't come to this. And even if you do have plenty of money, we'll try to make sure that it's cheap for you anyway. So that is the good news. I'm happy to talk more about that with all of you guys afterwards. Yeah, there's a lake there. That is an actual picture. So if you go to the next slide, just for location, you can kind of see it there. It is so close to Lancaster. You can see the little red pin, and there we are. So it's so close. It's really not far away. Yeah, I think that's all I've got. So we can just close out with some celebrations then, for whatever celebrations you guys might have. I'm sure that is probably a celebration for you. Yeah, so whoa, you're getting vaccinated? Oh. Wow, that is awesome. Congratulations, Vicky. Yeah, so excited to get vaccinated. Yeah. Wow, that's huge. Okay. Training conference?
No, but Mike, so like, it's a fun thing and I'm very excited for, but I'm also very stressed out because it's like that kind of thing is like very stressful for me. But I got a text today from Tripp saying, I'm leaving the seminar you're in, which was like a big like, oh.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you and me both will be in that seminar, so we can, it's my job to just sabotage that entire seminar that Tripp's leading. Yeah, so. Yeah. We will be. Yeah, we're going to Wheatland, so it's going to be fun. That's right. Any other celebrations? Yeah. Yeah, training conference will be fun. It's a Morgan thing. Cool. All right. Well then, I think that's all for this week. But thank you, Josiah, for live stream stuff, as always. Anyone who's tuning in, goodbye. Oh, yeah. And good night.